Welcome to Tabletop Gaming Guild. Tabletop Gaming Guild is all about the experiences members of playing tabletop games with friends and families can create. Today we're looking at Cryptid Urban Legends, designed by Hal Duncan, Ruth Revere, published by Osprey Games, and art by Kwanchai Moria. We have previously looked at Cryptid. Now, Cryptid Urban Legends is a standalone independent game with the same theme and from the same universe. While Cryptid was about solving the puzzle faster than your opponents,
Cryptid's Urban Legend is a two-player head-to-head game where you can either play as scientists trying to hunt down and find the location of the cryptid, or you can play as the cryptid trying to elude those scientists. This is played through manipulating the movement of sensors to try to gain a favorable footing.
the goal of this game depends on which side you're playing as. If you're playing as the cryptid, you cannot win in the first 2 turns. To win, first there has to be 7 blocks on the board, which I'll go into how you increase the number of blocks as I teach you the rules. Additionally, they will have to have their presence counters on the furthest blocks on each side of the board during the phase 3 of the game, the victory check. The scientists can win on the first turn of the game. They win if during the victory check, Cryptid has 1 or fewer presence counters on the board. The game can also end if this deck of blocks runs out, in which case all remaining evidence tokens on the board will be given out based on whose side of the board they're closest to, and whoever has the most evidence tokens wins the game. The game is broken up into 5 phases: the censor phase, hiding phase, victory phase, restrict phase, and expand phase. Before starting the first censor phase, you will draw 3 cards into your hand, and you'll never get any more cards unless you spend an action to do so. Players will be taking turns moving all these sensors from the active row into the inactive row. Once they are in the inactive row, they cannot be moved anymore this round. On a player's turn, they can either play a card from their hand, use their wild card, or draw cards. If they're playing a card from their hand, we're going to look at the action type listed on it and move the sensors as designated.
There are 3 types of movements, but basically you're going to be playing a movement card from your hand and following the movement pattern illustrated on that card. Each one's going to be moving these sensors in different ways, so it's very important to manage your hand so that you have a good variety of movement types to utilize throughout the game. But if you very much need a specific movement type and you don't have it in your hand, you can use your wild card. But this is a one-time use card that you can only get back through gaining evidence tokens.
If you choose to take your action to draw cards, note this is the only way to get cards into your hand after the beginning of the game. And you also note you do have a hand cap of 4, so you cannot take this action if you already have 4 cards. Once all sensors have moved into the inactive row, that ends the censor phase, and you're moving into the hide phase, in which the cryptid can add presence to the inactive row. They do this by either stating a color combination or a number combination. So, for example, if they called out white and black as their color combination, they could put a presence on this block, because that block is adjacent to both white and black. However, this block is adjacent to white, black, and red. Because red was not in the color combination that they chose, they cannot put a presence counter there. However, if they chose to say 6 as their statement, each of these blocks is adjacent to 6 censor cubes, so they get a presence on both these blocks. At the end of the hide phase, all presence counters from the active row disappear, and then you go into the victory check phase.
Check to see if the cryptid has 1 or fewer presence counters on the board, or presence on both the furthest ends of the blocks with 7 blocks on the board. If neither of those conditions are met, continue on to phase 4, the restrict phase, only happens if there's 7 blocks on the board. During this phase, the scientist removes 2 blocks from the outer edges of the board. However, those 2 blocks do have to be adjacent to each other,
and neither can have a presence on them. Fifth phase is expand. The active player gets to draw 2 cards from the top of the deck. If he reveals a mysterious block, he must put an evidence counter on that block. Those evidence counters can be claimed throughout a round by the Cryptid if they put a presence token on it. That would mean they get to claim that evidence token and reactivate their wild card. The scientist can remove that block during the restrict phase, and then they get to take the evidence tokens and reactivate their wild card. Overall, I think it's a pretty interesting head-to-head, though I feel like there's some pretty obvious starting moves once you get going. There's certain things you're going to want to do all the time. It feels a little like tic-tac-toe, where it's like, well, if I do this, then they're going to do this, then I do this. The only thing that throws that off and makes it worth playing is the cards may be drawn in a way that you don't have the specific movements you want. But because there's only 3 card types, you do have a relatively decent chance of actually having the right cards. When you do well in this game, you do feel really smart, but if you are really struggling, you're going to feel really dumb. So keep that in mind. Make sure it's very important that you have relatively evenly balanced players. When you're playing a new player, you may need to take it a little easy on them just until they get their head around the strategy behind it. I personally don't think this is going to stay in my collection, but it was an interesting game to try, and I can see some people really enjoying it.
In short, if you have 2 players that enjoy looking at every possible move and can visualize the end results of those moves while still thinking multi-directionally and factoring in alternate paths, that is a group that will enjoy this game. Thank you again for watching. Please join us again on YouTube, Twitch, Instagram, and other social medias. And please don't forget to like and subscribe.